So today we have a 2009 Pontiac Vibe all-wheel drive, and it has a wheel bearing type noise, steady hum at highway speeds and even below on highway speeds. You can hear it on a gravel road even. I've determined the noises from the rear. Let's have a look here. I don't know if this is going to pick it up or not, but you can hear the growl from the rear. Now, let's have a look at the procedure to remove these wheel bearings. So it's a hub and bearing assembly. It's held in with 4 bolts in the back. Here's the procedure from GM. It says step 1, remove the knuckle assembly. Well, that's not going to happen. We're going to have issues with bushings. Then it says once you remove the knuckle assembly, remove the wheel bearing dust deflector. And you're expected to replace that dust deflector. Now, to get that dust deflector out, you have to take the wheel speed sensor out. The steering knuckle, or the wheel bearing knuckle, is cast iron, so that speed sensor will never come out of there without breaking. I did a quick check on the parts price, almost $500 for a wheel speed sensor if you break it. So let's have a look at why we can't do this on the vehicle. So here you can see one of the fasteners that holds the wheel bearing in. Right there. Now the problem is this dust deflector is underneath, or the bolts are underneath this dust deflector. So there's not enough room to get a socket in here to remove this. Oh, that's just wonderful, General Motors. Excellent design. There's the wheel speed sensor, as I mentioned. Oh, down. There's the wheel speed sensor, as I mentioned, right up in here. And it's going into this cast housing and through that dust deflector, so you can't just pry that dust deflector out of there. All they had to do was relieve it on the 4 sides right in this area here so that you could get a socket in there. Oh brother. So I took this long thin screwdriver and I just bent that dust deflector in ever so slightly in order to get clearance to get a socket in there, and I managed to get it. It's 12 mil. It looked like 14 because it was rusty, but it's actually 12. I managed to get it loosened. Now I don't think you can remove it completely because there's a heavy washer built into the bolt, but I can get them loose, and if I can pull the axle hub bearing off gradually, I should be able to leave the axle shaft and the knuckle and everything in here. So we're going to give that a try. So we're going to try and replace these 2 wheel bearings on this 2009 Vibe. I've elected to use these particular wheel bearings, World Parts. Try to save a couple bucks. There's no speed sensor in this bearing. The speed sensor is actually in the housing and runs on the CV shaft. So I've got it on the hoist, got the wheels off of it. We may end up putting a set of brakes on it at the same time. They're a little bit rusty, but we'll evaluate them a little better once we get them completely apart. So the brake pads aren't too bad, but the pad clips are rusted in. The slide pins are seized. You can see the brakes haven't been applying 100%. So I think given the fact that we have to take them all apart to do this wheel bearing assembly, we're going to put new pads and rotors while we're here. Clean up all these caliper pins and slides. So remove the 12-point socket with a 1 3/16 nut, and if you're lucky, the axle shaft will just push in. So this one's free in here. Now we've got to access the 4 bolts that hold the bearing in from the back. So if you take a small screwdriver, you can bend the edge of the shield in about a 1/16 of an inch where all 4 bolts are. And then you can take the nuts off there, or the bolts off there. A 12 millimeter head, but they'll be rusty like this one. You don't need to remove the bolts completely. I've actually threaded the top left one and the bottom right one in about halfway, and I'm going to use the air chisel now to push on the bearing using the bolt as a driver. So there's the hub and bearing and backing plate, parking brake assembly off. We should be able to just knock the wheel bearing out of there now. You don't have to take the parking brake shoes off. Here's the speed sensor I was talking about. That's never going to come out of this cast knuckle, and there's this stainless steel sleeve that they decided that they needed in there for some stupid reason, is what causes the problem getting access to these bolts. But as long as it doesn't rub on the reluctor when we're done, it should be fine. I'll just continue here. So it's back together. I just got to put this axle nut on, but I'm going to wait until I've got the rotor and brakes on so I can put something in there to hold it from turning. The bolts that hold the brake or the wheel bearing in are 41 foot-pounds, and this is 159 foot-pounds. Technically, you're not supposed to reuse this nut because it's staked, but we're going to put some Loctite on it and restake it. I'm perfectly sure that it's not going to fall off. And then we're going to fix the brakes. Then we got to repeat everything on the other side. So that's one side done. Caliper pins were both seized. I had to heat the brake caliper bracket to get the pins to move, but I freed them up, cleaned them up, and well, now we just got to repeat everything on the other side.